Welcome to the lecture on linear equations. We're going to do this in 3 parts. First, definitions and terminology, and then subsequent videos will cover simplifying expressions and solving multi-step equations. So, definitions. Let's talk about the additive inverse. The opposite of a number is its additive inverse. And so we would say that the additive inverse of A is negative A. For examples, if you had positive 5, the additive inverse is negative 5, whereas if you had negative 76.1, the additive inverse is 76.1. So the additive inverse is you have to change the sign. In the multiplicative inverse, you're taking the reciprocal of a number and you're saying that is the multiplicative inverse. So for example, if you have 2, you have to do 1 over 2 or 1/2 to get the multiplicative inverse. And you're keeping the sign the same, positive to positive. If you were to have negative 4 over 5 as your starting or original value, then the multiplicative inverse is negative 5 over 4. So you're flipping the values, but you're keeping the same sign. All right, the addition and subtraction properties of equality. So these look fancy, but really what they're saying is if you have an equation where 2 sides are equal, then you can subtract the same thing from each side and you haven't changed the equality, right? The equality is still true. And you can do that with addition. So you can add the same thing to both sides of an equation and it'll still be equal. And then you also have the division and multiplication properties of equality, which are very similar. If you have an equation, you can divide both sides by the same thing and maintain equality. And you could also multiply by the same number on each side to maintain equality. So let's look at some vocabulary. So a variable is, I want you to think about x. Solve the equation for x. What is the value of x? Your favorite, right? This is your variable. It refers to a symbol. And we typically use X, Y, Z, W, but you might see S, T, even A, B, or C, but it just marks an unknown value. A term is either a number or a letter or a collection multiplied together. Like terms are terms which have the same letters, so like they're all X's, for example, and who have the same power. So like x squared would go with x squared. But you could also have like 5x squared going with 10x squared. As long as they're both x squareds, they're like terms. Similarly, you might have 3xy, and that could go with negative 100xy. Linear refers to a collection of terms in which the highest power is 1. Now, if you were to see something like 5x, there is no written power. There is no little 1 on that, but it's implied. But that would be a linear term. And a constant is just numbers. 5, pi, negative 0.1. All right, so let's identify the constant terms here in this bubble of terms. So if you spotted 33 and 0.1, you're correct. These are the constant terms. We have linear terms with x and 2y. We have squared terms with x squared and 11x squared. And then we even have a cubic term with negative y cubed. Let's identify the linear terms here in this bubble. So if you identified 62x, y, and negative 3z, you are correct. Those are our linear terms. They don't have a power written on them, but if we were to write a power, it would be the power of 1. All right, next we're going to find the like terms. So we want to pair up terms in this bubble. So we can pair up our constant terms. We can pair up our squared terms. and we could pair our linear terms. Meaning we could add these pairs together. So we could combine 49 and 1. We could add them together to get 50. We could combine x squared and 11x squared. We could add them together to get 12x squared. And we could also add 5y with 2y to get 7y.